Welcome back to the Frisco RoughRiders pregame show. Joining us today is minor league pitching coordinator Danny Clark in his 6th season at the helm of the Rangers minor league pitching staff. Danny, we saw the Double-A debut of Andrew Faulkner last night, recently called up from Advanced A Myrtle Beach. And up in the broadcast booth, we were impressed by his adherence to a plan that looked like it centered around pitching inside to right-handed hitters. What were your thoughts on Andrew's Double-A debut last night?
Well, first of all, I thought he stuck to his plan. That's been his plan from really the day we signed him. He's always been a pitcher that likes to throw inside. And obviously we don't find too many pitchers that like to do that. I thought last night, first of all, I thought his presence on the mound was very good. I thought he handled the running game very well. And more importantly, I thought his command to his glove side, I thought one of the things negative that he did not get to his arm side enough, and I felt like it didn't get a strong mix for the hitters last night. But overall, I was very pleased with what Andrew did. Basically what we expected him to do. He'll get his feet wet here, and you're going to see a lot of good things about Andrew Faulkner.
The breaking ball that he throws, is that a curveball or a slider? Heard it's called a slider technically, but I've also heard that the grip he uses is more like that of a curveball, and the movement exhibits some qualities of a curveball as well. So from a terminology standpoint, what exactly is he throwing for that breaking pitch?
Well, from a mind standpoint, we want it to be called a slider because we want him to be aggressive with the pitch. A lot of times, especially to his arm side, it comes out like a curveball. It is more of a curveball grip than a slider grip, but, we're trying to get the mindset and the hand speed to simulate being a slider.
It was a rough night for the back end of the pitching staff last night. They gave up 4 runs in the 6th, coughed up a 3-run lead. What is your approach the following day after the bullpen struggles a little bit? Do you put a lot of stock into last night, or do you simply throw the previous performance out to sea?
I don't necessarily look more of game to game. I look at more importantly of a monthly type scenario with bullpen guys because obviously their opportunities, is a lot more than starters. And last night's case with the bullpen, we just didn't command the fastball. We didn't get, we didn't work ahead. But like Will Lamb's case, it was a rough night for him last night. But I've heard that he's had 3 or 4 good appearances here in the last month. So we kind of look at it more monthly than we do game by game.
I would imagine it's still a fine line that you have to walk between trying to find lessons to glean from the previous outing, but at the same time keeping the focus on the big picture.
Yeah, I think the big picture, obviously, especially when you get to Double-A, that's what we got to look at. Is he ready to go in September? And that being an option as far as a call-up for our big league club. So that's what, more importantly, I look at, and I know we do. But, the biggest thing from a reliever standpoint, a lot of times people don't understand, but, most of these guys were starters when they were younger and even younger in pro ball and starting to get acclimated to how the routines and all those things that goes into being a reliever. It's tougher, and a lot of times, even though you're just maybe throwing 1 inning at a time, it's still a tougher preparation than a lot of people understand.
Minor league pitching coordinator Danny Clark joining us on the RoughRiders pregame show. And Danny, how tough is life for Joseph Ortiz right now? This is essentially his spring training, and it's coming against Double-A hitters that are already 100-plus games into the season.
Yeah, I think, first of all, obviously with Joey, his foot, that's the reason he was on the Major League DL, and obviously he's rehabbing, and you can see him hobbling out there, and it's going to take some time for him to trust, number one. He doesn't feel the pain, but in the back of his mind, he says, that he still is concerned whether it's going to, re-injure or something, and that's any time you get rehab guys, you got to kind of overlook the results of it and look at more of, how they're moving around, what their thought process is, are their preparation doing the right things and getting themselves prepared. I don't really put a lot of stock as far as in the results of the game at this point for him.
Do you have 10 cents to share on Jake Thompson? Had you heard of Jake before the trade that ultimately brought him to the Rangers organization?
I've talked to 3 or 4 of our pro scouts. I've never had any prior visual of Jake. I've obviously watched videos since we have made the trade. I've talked to our pro scouts that sit on him. It's a big body guy, obviously from Texas here, so that's exciting to bring someone back home. I've heard that he can really spin a breaking ball. He's got a really tight spin to the breaking ball, and I hear it's a very durable body. I'm really excited to see what he features tonight. The fastball, to me, I have seen video, it looks like sometimes he gets to the side of the baseball, and that's something that we want to see for ourselves before we make any adjustments. But I've heard a lot of good things about him. I've actually met him. He seems like a very good, high character young man. So there's a lot of positives into that.
The buzz around Jake when he was with the Tigers were some questions about his ability to handle maybe the workload of a starter over the course of the season in terms of innings pitched. When you acquire or get your hands on a prospect that got his start in another organization, how much stock or weight do you put into the plan or the program that another team may have been working a guy through?
First of all, I know right now he's sitting at 94 innings this year. For a guy that's third year out, we're looking at probably 140 innings, so he's got about 50 innings to play with. That's obviously the rest of this season in an instructional league, whether he goes there or not. But really we like to get, once we get him into our system, and once we see him a few times, then we kind of start putting a plan together. But from inning standpoint, he is exactly on course of basically what most of our guys that's in Double-A. Andrew Faulkner's at 98 innings, so they're very close, age-wise, and as far as they're close from the inning standpoint.
Before we sat down for this interview, saw the Dutch oven, Derek Holland, walking around. You, of course, had Derek on the staff when you were the pitching coach for the Clinton Lumber Kings back in the 2007 and 2008 seasons. Have you had a chance to catch up with Derek at all? And do you deal with Major League rehabbers at all? And will you work with Derek during his rehab stint here in Frisco?
Well, first of all, with Derek, obviously was his pitching coach in Clinton, Iowa. And Derek and I, we've always stayed in touch for over the last 6 or 7 years, whatever it may be. And, Derek and I have a good relationship. I'm very honest with Derek. He's a very competitive person by nature. Obviously, he's had a lot of success at the big league level, and, we're excited to get him back into the fold of being at the big league level and helping our rotation out. As far as a pitching coordinator with the rehab, obviously behind the scenes, it comes from our big league training staff, comes from Mike Maddox, basically communicating, by phone, setting the plan. And then obviously if we see something with Derek, I have free reins, or the pitching coaches, to make some minor adjustments. Really the biggest thing is just we communicate it back to Mike.
Lastly, Danny, as we wind down here, I had the opportunity to talk to Kyle Lotzkar yesterday. Kyle, of course, has a history of injuries, and he says that one of the reasons he's been able to avoid landing on the DL for an extended period of time this year is because of his ability to stick to a routine. And here we are in late July, and at this point of the season when guys are really starting to break down physically, how important is it for pitchers to stick to the plan that they've been on since day one of the season?
Well, that's one of the big parts of my job is, from an inning standpoint. And we laid out a plan, for example, in Kyle's, that, our number one goal is to have him healthy at the end of the year because obviously his past history. So you see Kyle, he has a lot of downtime in between his outings. It's usually 2 to 3 inning stints. He has 2 or 3 days off where he has a chance to recover. Those plans have been set in place a lot of times in the wintertime, even in spring training, we set those plans. So a lot of times we don't really have to worry about how things change because we know how everybody's mapped out from start to finish. And so, as of right now in Kyle's spot, he's exactly on target to where he needs to be at the end of the season.
Do you find that you have to fight guys sometimes, maybe when they tweak a muscle and don't want to do this lift or want to skip this part of the routine? Do you have to fight guys at this point of the season to stick to the plan and keep with the routine?
Well, most of the time they want to do more. And especially when they get on the mound, they want to go more, and they don't understand a lot of times why am I getting pulled in the 5th or the 6th inning. And, there again, we have a long-range plan for them because we a lot of times we break down pitchers by innings, according to how many years of service they have, what their age is, the previous history of, if they've had arm injuries or stuff like that. So a lot of times we have to slow them down more than push them. And, we have to continuously remind them, that we're looking out for their best interest of the long term, not necessarily the short term.
There's certainly a lot of buzz surrounding this organization. It's nice to have you around. Thanks so much for sharing your insight with us on the pregame show today. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for having me.
He's minor league pitching coordinator Danny Clark. We're back in a moment on the RoughRiders Baseball Network.